here in Cologne to check out Gamescom and GDC Europe. Crytek's here also, but they want to show us Ryse, and in particular address some of the concerns that have come up at E3. They want to show people that their game isn't all flash and actually has some substance. What they showed was combat, about a half hour of it. They wanted to show that there was a lot more nuance in the way that the character handled and the way he took down barbarians.
Are you hoping the end result will be a combat akin to something like Batman, where you're sort of ping-ponging between enemies, or do you feel like it's more about focusing on one enemy at a time?
When we set out to make the game, like we like the concept of flow, right? And we said, okay, at a very basic level, like how do we create enemies that try to break you out of that? So definitely there is a component about that, like being able to ping pong, and like the better you get at it, it just feels good to do that. But you know, you mentioned like the 1 versus 1, so we have a camera system that will actually fluctuate based on the different amounts of enemies. So when you're fighting one guy, you know, it really is this mano-a-mano kind of feeling, which is a lot different from, you know, games like Batman or other kind of, you know, games of the genre. And that goes back to our kind of earliest thing of, you know, this, you know, brutality, this close-up combat,
right.
A real life and death struggle. It feels good because now in Gamescom, it's starting to come out, it's starting to say, okay, well, all these pieces that we planned all these months ago, wondering if it would work, you know, like, it's starting to come together, so yeah.
The executions, basically you wear down an enemy to the point where they have a skull floating over their head. And that goes into an execution mode, which is essentially a QuickTime event.
Something like that, yeah.
So why not, unless I'm misunderstanding, there is no fail state there. So if you go through that QuickTime event, mess up all the button presses, not just the timing, but let's say press the wrong buttons, you're still gonna kill the guy.
Yep.
Why did you make that decision? Why not allow people to fail?
What you find is actually the challenge is getting into the executable state. And so what we found is actually, you know, before, as we were iterating through combat, we had interruptions on executions. But what ended up happening just felt like too much, you know, too hardcore because A, it's not easy fighting 6 of our enemies because they dynamically move around. So you get to this point and you just want kind of, you know, this nice payoff.
What they're focusing on is the fluidity of combat and the way it works through animation. Unfortunately, that means that they had to simplify some of the movements, and it ends up feeling like a game that perhaps is catering a little too much to the mid-core of gamers and won't appeal to people who are really hardcore combat fanatics.
When you do something that's like super like sword fighting simulation, you're almost forcing the game to be about single enemies rather than multiple enemies. Yeah, I mean, I really wish it would be cool, like, at some point to run you through some of the older builds because you feel the parry and you're like, oh, that parry, you know, was great. And then this, you know, guy comes with the flying attack and you're like, oh man, I was doing this parry animation that took this many frames and I just couldn't react to this other guy. It's these kind of things that, you know, you can't read in a book or if you just watch a video or, you know, you'll never figure out. But why does hit pause feel good on this frame? Like, what does animation like do to the actual combat system? Whether it's Street Fighter or like, you know, a DMC or, you know, there are like, it really is about that technical understanding of like what it takes to build something that feels good. And the thing that E3 gave us was like, okay, well, they definitely hate this idea that, you know, there's this a game that is just about QuickTime events. So I think, you know, coming out of Gamescom, we just want to let you like, no, we've been working hard on something, you know, that has a lot more depth than what you saw there.
What the game needs to deliver, and developers want to deliver, is something that has the nuance and the back and forth of a Street Fighter title. What they might end up with is a generic feeling button masher, and frankly, there's way too many of those already.